right, so what we're going to do, we're going to go right into the teaching. This teaching this morning is going to be a little different than you used to, because as you know, I'm a little like passionate about the temple. Some people can't understand why. Seriously, I got people telling me, well, why do you spend all that time in the temple? There's no temple. We don't need it. Well, if only you knew that the essence of the Bible is based on the throne of God, right? So if you understand what the throne of God is and what it represents, and we say it every Shabbat when we sing, Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, right? We sing it when we talk about the Torah portions and all that stuff. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah udvar Adonai mi Yerushalayim, and we sing it. Oh yeah, hallelujah! And then we say, the study of the temple said, why? Ki mitzion, because out of Zion shall come forth the Torah. Zion is the city. Zion is the city, the temple of the people. Now, in the time of David, because right now there's a ridiculous theory that the temple is in the city of David, and I call it ridiculous because archaeologically, historically, biblically, it doesn't line up. So if you believe in that theory, I respect your opinion, but it's standing on nothing. There's no evidence whatsoever of a temple anywhere. I've talked to Elat Mazar, I talked to Benjamin Mazar, I'm sorry, not Benjamin Mazar, Dan Bahat, Elat Orig Barkat, you know, some of the leading archaeologists, and I've asked them directly, have you found any archaeological evidence of the temple in the city of David? That said, zero, none, nothing, ever. Ever. I have all the books that I'm reading right now on the 50 years of archaeology of Jerusalem from 67 to now. There's not one shred of evidence, not one, that says the city of David was the location of the temple, not one. Okay, now you don't believe me, check it out for yourself. Don't believe me. Okay, you better be on point, because when you move the temple, you're moving the center of God's throne. It's like saying, I want to move the White House to Florida. Do you have the legal authority to move the White House? Then why do we want to move the throne of God? Makes no sense. Now, in the time of David, yes, the city of David, which was this area only, this little bitty area right here, it looks like the Florida Peninsula here, a little bit, like half of it. Okay? That little, anything within the walls was the city of David, was called Zion. Now, when Solomon built the temple, the walls expanded to the north, never to the east, to the north and to the west, because of the population explosion. So, have you ever seen the way they dedicated the temple walls back in the time of the Bible? Do you know there's a procedure that you have to do when you expand the city of Jerusalem and you have to dedicate the wall? Did you know that? I mean, it's actually in the book of Nehemiah. Now, if you read the book of Nehemiah, you realize that the Bible is talking about the restoration of the temple. And when Nehemiah rededicated the walls, you notice that it was the priestly line who were in charge of the construction of the walls. Why is the priestly line in charge of the construction of the walls? Because the city of Jerusalem is holy. So every time they would expand on the wall. So let me show you something. In the time of David, the temple has never, or even the tabernacle, has never been located in the city of David. Now you say, well, Rico, the Ark of the Covenant was there, one. Yes, the Ark of the Covenant was there because of fear that the Philistines will take it. But the tabernacle was 2 miles north of the city of David in the city and the town of Givon. Okay? That's why you had two high priests, Abiathar and Sadok. Because one had to stay with the Ark of the Covenant and the other one with the tabernacle. See, if we don't study the temple, we never know that. So we read the information. Oh, so the city of David was the location of the altar, of the ark. So if the ark was there, then the tabernacle was there. No sacrifices that we know of in the time of David were ever done in the city of David. They were not allowed, because the Lord always consolidated that to the tabernacle. Okay, so now, when the city was expanded to the left, here, then they have to expand the city. They have to put walls around it. You just didn't build a wall and put it out there and says, that's it, guys, city limits over there. No. You have to have the priests with 2 loaves of bread and the people and the Levites walking along the side of the walls. They will stop They would do a wave offering with the bread. They would eat it, and that became holy as part of the city. Okay, so in the letters in the book First and Second Kings and First and Second Samuel, clearly is only talking about Jerusalem in the time of David. That's it. Not in the time of Solomon. In the time of David. Now, when David dies, then Chronicles and First Kings starts talking about the city, the Jerusalem, expanding to the Temple Mount, Har Habayit, the mountain of the Lord, right? Yes? Okay, so therefore, whatever the walls were surrounding the city, whatever expansion of the walls, then whatever was inside of it was called Zion. The people, the temple, the city. Does that make sense? I guarantee you, this little bit, where am I, by the way? What's the name of this town? What? Reedville, something like that? Okay, I guarantee you the town is bigger today than it was 100 years ago. Right? City limits were a little expanding, correct? So that's acceptable here, but when it comes to Jerusalem, we want to limit Zion only to a little piece of land over here in the city of David. By the way, the city of David today is outside the modern-day city walls of the old city of Jerusalem. But in the temple period, the city of David was inside the city walls in the time of the first century. And you know, you see this little street right here? I stood on it. I have a picture. I stood on it. Right there. For the first time in 2,000 years, it's actually 30 feet below ground. They uncovered it. So if the city of David was the location of the temple, then why is this street coming all the way from Shiloah all the way to the Temple Mount? That's only one piece of evidence. But right now, I'm not really going to talk about that. What I want to talk about the function of the temple. And I'm going to connect it with how we're supposed to work together as a body, understanding the function of the temple. When you study the temple, or when you read about the temple, or when you talk about the temple, you only think about sacrifices, blood, death. That's what everybody else does. They don't realize that the temple in the ancient world was the center of their existence. In every culture, brother, in the Greek culture, every temple was located on a high hill, on a mountain. It had to be, because it's called cosmic mountains. The God of the Bible is the God of mountains. Okay? It's a competition for honor. I mean, Genesis 28, we read it a few weeks back, talks about the mountain of the Lord, where he revealed the ladder coming from heaven. By the way, that's nothing new. In the ancient world, if you would have presented that story to people from Samaria, from people from Mesopotamia, from people from Assyria and Persia and whatever, back in the ancient world, they would have said, yeah, we know what that is. That's a cigarette. We know what that is. Every nation had it, because a cigarette was a high mount, and it was not a temple. It was a way that the gods could come down, up and down, and communicate with humanity. So the message that the Lord is sending Jacob is that he is the one who communicates with humanity, not the gods of the Mesopotamians. And the place where he made the covenant is the place that is the gate to heaven, not the ones in Mesopotamia. All of a sudden, the Bible takes a different turn, doesn't it? Because we wonder, oh, what is that about, ascending and descending? Well, you go to the Bible Lands Museum in Jerusalem, and I could take you to the cylinder seals that shows you exactly a ladder, and you have angels coming up and down. That's not a new story. It was a very well-known story. The Lord is using the language of his time to reveal who he is and how he's going to work and through whom he's going to work. He is saying, he's not the God of those people. I am the one who give you access to heaven. I am the one who give you access to me. Okay? All right. So, the whole city is holy. But the whole city, the people and the temple had a function. For example, in the time of the temple, you could only eat the Passover inside the city walls. Well, you're looking at me like, really? I never heard that before. How can you prove that, Rico? Where is that in the Bible? Because that's what always everybody says. Where is that in Scripture? Is that rabbinical? It's actually in Deuteronomy chapter 16. Let's go there. In Deuteronomy chapter 16, and I have until 12:30, so I have to hurry up. says, observe the month of Aviv and keep it. By the way, wait. Aviv. You can't use the word Aviv. That's a pagan word. Really, Rico? How do you know? It's a Canaanite word. I can't say Nisan, so you can't say Aviv either. Because everything that comes from Babylon is bad. You know? Correct? Sometimes we make rash decisions and we blame everything to the devil when in fact it's just, are you worshiping the word Aviv? Are you worshiping the word Nisan? Then you can't drive a Mazda and you can't wear Nike. You can't say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Surely you cannot say even, August, or you're worshiping the Emperor Augustus. You see the problem we're in? Because we have come from a system that lied to us, and now we're going into a system that is so amazed with truth. Now we become Torah terrorists, and now everything's pagan to the point that we cannot communicate with anybody. We can't even talk to anybody anymore. And now we've taken the Bible to extremes. How do I know? Rico, ask me, how do you know? Because I used to do it. I'm guilty of the very same thing. I had to retire my my terrorist, my Torah terrorist garments and put them away. It doesn't do anybody any good anymore. We need to educate ourselves, educate each other, and lift up the awareness of people by showing them, teaching them, and by example what God is. Those kids right there, they're watching. And they don't want to live in fear. They want to live. The world out there gives you enough fear. They don't need more from the parents. We are the ones who need to give them hope. But if I'm focusing about the destruction of the earth next week, we don't think about the impact those kids are going to have. And they're our generation. So let's pray for them on Shabbat. Let's give them, make it like the Lord, like bless you, and then make you like Ephraim and Manasseh, but you'll die next week. Is that logical? We're going to have 12 years of existence. So let me give you everything free until we'll die. That's the mindset today. Well, wait a minute. It's the same message that we have in the body of Messiah that the world, that the government is bringing. Free salvation, free blessings, no obedience, nothing. Oh, Lord, stay focused, Rico. It says, observe the month of Aviv and keep the Passover of the Lord your God in the month of Aviv. The Lord your God brought you out of Egypt by night. Therefore you shall sacrifice the Passover of the Lord your God from the flock and the herd and the place in the place where the Lord chooses to put his name. Where is that place finally? Jerusalem. Now, it's interesting because the tabernacle kept moving, and it went to Shechem, and from there it went to Gilgal, and then it went to Shiloh for 396 years. Then it went to, forgot one place. And then when it went to Givon, and then it went to Jerusalem. And when it got to Jerusalem, no one can do sacrifices on any other altar, any other place except for Jerusalem. It's not allowed. So then why are people taking a Passover lamb today, or a lamb, slaughtering it, and putting the blood on the doorpost today in America when that's not allowed? That is happening amongst Hebrew roots people. That is actually against the Torah. That's because we don't study the temple. Because if you understood the temple, you would never do that because you don't have the legal jurisdiction to do so. Our zeal to wanting to do what the Bible says is leading us into destruction by overtaking the authority that God has not given us and doing it according to our own will. And the excuse is, well, I want to obey. Well, you have no authority. That's why we don't obey anything. So because we have no structure of leadership anywhere, we do according to what we want to do. Wait a minute. That story already happened. The Bible says during the time of the judges that Israel did according to the imaginations of their own heart because there were no judges in the land. The history being repeated all over again. We haven't learned our lesson. So the Lord says, I'll give you the blueprint in the last days through the prophet Ezekiel, so that you're able to follow the blueprint, you're able to follow the instructions, you're able to know exactly what pleases me, so we don't make the same mistake Israel committed. That's my motivation to teach this stuff. It's not an easy topic. Everybody wonders what in the world I'm doing. You will think, right? People want to learn about the throne of God, but people think I'm crazy. Now people are saying that I don't believe in Yeshua because I'm teaching on the temple. That's ridiculous. Now, mind you, almost all of the events of Yeshua's ministry happened in the temple, around the feast, and around the Sabbath. But if I teach on the Sabbath, on the feast, and the temple, I'm a heretic. All right, I need you to help me pray today. Watch this. It says, therefore you shall sacrifice the Passover of the Lord your God from the flock and the herd in the place where the Lord shall choose to place his name. Now let me move to verse 6 so we can hurry up. No, verse 5. You may not sacrifice the Passover within any of your gates, which the Lord your God gives you, but in the place, hamakom, where the Lord your God chooses to make his name abide, there you shall offer the Passover at twilight, at the going down of the sun, at the time you came out of Egypt. So where is it supposed to be? Where does the Lord say you could only slaughter and eat the sacrifice, the offering, the Passover? Jerusalem. Now, does that mean that you cannot eat lamb today? Yes, you can. You can, but you cannot call that the Passover. That's a memorial. Now, when the temple stands and the altar is restored, don't you dare be eating lamb. Eat chicken or something. You can't eat the lamb, because then it will give the impression that you slaughter a lamb as a sacrifice and you put it on your table when you're supposed to do it in Jerusalem. You follow? Understand the instructions so we don't caught ourselves in sin, in transgression. Is that a bomb enough for you? It's only one of many today. Okay? I need to make you aware of something that's important. We need to go back to the throne of God. So, what have we learned already? We've learned that everything within the city limits is Zion. Is the temple and the people and the city becomes Zion, right? We've learned that only inside the city walls, during the time of the temple, during the time when the temple stood, can you eat the Passover lamb inside the city walls. Why? Because the city is kadosh, the city is holy. They cannot charge you. If you go to Jerusalem during the high holidays, in the time of the temple, if you lived over here, you cannot charge rent for an Airbnb to anybody visiting Jerusalem that day, that week. It was illegal, because you are the guests of the Lord. These are his feasts. That's his city. That's his place. Holy. You are welcome. So he's not going to profit off of you. That was a good place to say amen. Let's go to the feast. Can you imagine? You live far, far away. You don't have the money. And the Lord says, come, I want you to come see me. Oh, but Lord, I don't have enough money to rent to an apartment. You're my guest. You don't need to pay. But then when we go to Jerusalem, the leadership, the high priestly line, who were corrupt, not the temple, not the function, but the priestly line who was supposed to facilitate for you, now they're corrupt with Rome, and now they are basically taking money and charging above the limit and doing what they're not supposed to. So instead of doing acts of righteousness to welcome you into the city of the Lord, they are oppressing you that you cannot bring anything to the Lord. Now Yeshua comes in and he turns over the tables, sending the message. What are you doing in my Father's house? By the way, let me ask you a question. Let me challenge you. Where was the location of all the shops on the Temple Mount during the time of Yeshua? If I ask the normal person who really doesn't have the opportunity to catch up with temple studies, you would assume that it was near the altar inside the temple. Nowhere to be found there. It's in the royal store. And you know who owned all the shops? Ananias, the high priest, the father-in-law of Caiaphas. We read the New Testament, but we never put a face or a city or a temple to it, and yet almost all the events happen surrounding the temple function. We don't know what the temple really represented in the ancient world. Have you ever heard the expression, the daughters of Zion? What does that mean in conjunction with the city, in connection with that map back there? See, daughters of Babylon or the daughters of Zion? Well, let me give you a geographical understanding to what that is. You see, because the city is holy, only the city walls, right? Any village surrounding Jerusalem within a 15-mile radius, any village surrounding Jerusalem was called the daughters of Zion, because they were outside the city walls. Now, if you do not understand the temple, then you're going to speculate with that expression, the daughters of Zion, and you're going to come up with your own ideas about prophecy. when it has a concrete context that you could apply into a spiritual application, but you cannot take something concrete and reinvent the wheel to make up something that is not. Like Babylon is actually literally Babylon. America is not Babylon. America is functioning under the system of Greek, Greco-Roman, Babylonian influences, but America is not Babylon. Babylon is actually Iraq, Mesopotamia. That's the location. What is the pulse on the world right now? What is moving the whole needle of war? The Middle East, exactly what the Bible says. We're looking to America to be the Antichrist, to be everything bad. The Lord has given us the last place of protection and freedom so far, and we want to make it into Babylon all the time. When in fact, Babylon is waiting over there. Yo, we're killing everybody. Yo, we want to kill you. Come visit us. You know? Now, does America have a very important prophetic picture behind it? Yes. Is it guilty of a lot of sins of Babylon influence? Yes. We have to know the differences. Okay? And that's an interpretation, so we can argue and disagree. That's okay. But there's some things that are concrete. And the temple is a concrete thing. So, oh, wait a minute. I hope these things can be read. If not, that's okay. We'll figure it out. So let me tell you why I study the temple, okay? Because God commanded it. Let's go to Ezekiel because it's, I changed it changed. So some verses you're not going to be able to see. Let's go to Ezekiel 43. Ezekiel 43, verse 10 to 12. It says, actually, let's read verse 6, okay? And 7, and then we'll go to verse 10. Then I heard him speaking to me from the temple, while a man stood beside me. Remember, this is the vision of Ezekiel. It's a prophecy about the third temple. It says, and he said to me, Son of man, this is the place of my? Oh, okay. And the place where the soles of my feet, where I will, of the forever. So I don't understand. How can something that God calls holy be actually, how can the Antichrist defile something that is defiled already? Right? I mean, no, well, wait a minute. That temple is going to be of the Antichrist. Really? He just called it his throne, where he will dwell forever. So you just challenge the authority of God in his temple? Oh, but wait a minute. The Antichrist is going to sit in the Holy of Holies. Where does it say that in the Bible anywhere? It doesn't say that anywhere. As a matter of fact, there's only one place where the king of Israel can sit. Where is it? Where can the Antichrist sit there? Because the priest cannot sit anywhere in this area. No one can sit over here. No one. You don't sit in the person's king. A priest cannot sit in that area. Only one person could. He can sit right here, north of the altar, right on this spot, right there. The slaughtering area, the altar is 15 feet high. It's about 100 feet long. And it's right, he will sit right there. This building was 22 stories high. Okay? If you get my virtual reality program, you can literally walk in and see it. I show you the phone. I got the map on 3D. You want to see it sometime? Say yes, dude. Seriously, look, I'm going to show it to you. Watch. Watch this. You're going to love it. Now, you got to pay attention. Okay, watch this on the phone. You want him to learn about the temple? Check it out. I'm going to take you to that place. Look at it. Look at that. See that? Isn't that cool? Yeah. Watch this. Whoa. Then what? You start walking inside, right? The 15 Psalms of Ascent was sang on those 15 steps. Then I take you in. I'll let you use it in a minute. You don't want to use that? Really? Oh, look how cool. Whoa. Isn't that awesome? Look at this. Look at that. Look at that. You see that? So let me tell you what the king. You notice what I'm trying to do, right? It's not a waste of time. This is the best investment I can make for this young man right now. That's the temple of my king. Look how beautiful it was. Look at that. Look at that. You see how big it was? I want you to look at it. Check it out. Go ahead. Learn about the throne of my king. Notice what I just did? If he dares to understand the temple of my king and see the beauty of it and behold it, generations can benefit from that little 5 minutes that I just invested with him. It's not about how much knowledge we have. It's how can we get everyone to understand the authority, the honor, the praise, the worship, everything that is inside this place. The only place that the temple where the king can sit was on this place right here, because God appointed him the king of Israel. Thus, he can sit as the king. So if anyone else will sit there other than the king of the line of Judah, they are usurping the authority and the honor of the one who owns the house, and then all hell breaks loose. That's why the Antichrist will sit in the temple as if he is God. When he sits in the temple, not in the Holy of Holies, but in that area, he is saying, I'm the king, I dwell here, and it's my authority. And God says, no. Now, the great tribulation will come. You need to know that, because while you're trying to figure out who the Antichrist is, someone is going to walk in and sit next to the altar, and you need to know when that happens, because the moment they sit on the altar, you know exactly how many days we have before Messiah returns. But if you don't study the temple, you will never know the sign. And you'll be looking to be Babylon when Babylon is over there. And it's like, put it right in your face, right here. It's right here, and you're looking over there. If you understand this function, then you understand the prophecies. You don't have to speculate. You don't have to make up stuff. It's right there. Now look to my right. When was the last time you saw people engage in the temple that way? Especially that age group. I do whatever it takes. Invest whatever it takes to make the generation understand about the throne of God, because we're commanded. And now it says in verse 10. In verse 10 it says this. As for you, actually read it with me, would you? As for you, mortal, describe the temple to the house of Israel. Are you the house of Israel? You like it? You guys like it? Isn't it cool? I'll show you more later. Is that okay? All right. You can pass it around a little bit if you want. Okay, so you got the house of Israel. Are you the house of Israel? Okay, so this is for you. It says, let them be ashamed of their iniquities. What was the... I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get them off track. I'm just trying to prove a point. Is that okay? It's not accepted to play video games on Shabbat, guys. It's the temple. Let me have it real quick. I'll give it to you later. You see, you can't get it away from them anymore. I'll let you use it later. I'll give you my word. I'll let you use it later. Isn't that awesome? We just want, please don't take it away. I'm being bad. You're not supposed to play video games. That's the house of the Lord. It's not a video game. What was the iniquity of Israel? They changed the calendar. They changed the location of the temple. They changed the feast. Sounds familiar? Jeroboam changed the 7th month to the 8th month. From the Levites and the priests to regular people becoming priests. And the location of the temple from Jerusalem to the city of, to Bethel and Tel Dan. Welcome to the same sin of Jeroboam, guys. We've done the same thing. You know what's happened next. Judgment and dispersion. We can change it, though. We can repent, and we can go back to God's authority. We can submit back to his authority, but we need to learn these principles. How many people were not here last night? Raise your hand. Okay, this is for you guys. Not to try to make you feel bad. I just don't want the people who were here last night answering. There are 613 commandments in the Torah. All right? 45% of those 613 deal directly with the temple. 279 commandments of the 613 deal directly with the temple. Crazy. I mean, would you disregard 45% of anything? I do jiu-jitsu, right? I do martial arts. If you don't like martial arts, you're going to have to get over that. Okay? I do jiu-jitsu. And when I train, I look for the head, for the arms, for the fingers, for the knees, for the hip, or whatever. Some people only disregard the legs. Why would you want to disregard 50% of your body? Right? And when you look at the overall perspective of the Bible and using the temple as a backdrop, the whole Bible makes sense. I'm going to repeat that again. When you look at the temple as the backdrop of the foundation of the Bible, where the throne of God is, where he dwells, right? then the Bible makes sense because everything was around temple function. The temple served as a bank. The temple served as a place of worship. It was a community center. It was the police department. No one dare steal from a bank because then you will be stealing from God. You know? They understood their roles and their jobs correctly. So when you keep reading here, it says, when they are ashamed of all that they have done, make known to them the plan. Repeat after me. Tavnit. Everybody, Tavnit. It's a blueprint. Any architects here? Let it be one, please. One architect. Anyone work with architects before? Anybody read plans? Okay. Okay, perfect. So you know that when your dad used to make a plan, he had to sign it and seal it. Can anybody change those plans? No. You can, if you notice there's a mistake based on the ground. You made mention of something yesterday. It says build on sand. You know, but even the architect who develops a house built on sand, he has to take in consideration a whole bunch of stuff. But because you're the builder, you understand certain things that the architect may not. So if you see a mistake, you go back to the architect and say, listen, you need to look at this again because your plans are not lining up with what we need for that to stand, right? But you yourself cannot change the plans, correct? Why do we change God's plans? He is the architect. It's been sealed by his name and his spirit. He gave the blueprint to Moses, he gave the blueprint to David, and he gave the blueprint to Ezekiel. What right do we have to change God's plan and change his location? What would you do if you go on a vacation, my brother, and you let me stay in your house, and when you come back, I moved all your stuff out, and then I moved your house. I hired him to lift it off the ground and move it about 100 feet. What would you do to me? Probably, I know you will. You'll be praying like, how dare this guy? You know? So imagine if that's the case with your house. Imagine the house of my king. Think on that level. You know? And who would he do to defend his house? All right. So now, verse 12 is not there, but we're going to, well, what does it say? It says, make known to them the plan of the temple. It's what? It's arrangement. Help me out, guys. It's whole, all its, and its entire, and it's, how many of us know the laws of the temple? This is a command. This is a command by God. Now, some people, and again, they're more interested in other stuff than what God commanded. Okay? So what I recommend is that if you like some side topics, and I'm not going to mention them, it's not going to edify anybody if I do. So if you like some side topics for your own private studies, go for it, all you want. But when it comes to the concrete things, let it be. Don't change your own interest to what God says to do. Because God doesn't really care about our interest. Let me repeat that again. He doesn't really care about our interest. He cares about the gift he's given you so he can use for his kingdom. And if you do what God called you to do, then he'll give you the reward and the blessing. He doesn't care about your interest. He cares about obedience. You obey, he gives you. But I like red instead of black. I don't care. What would you do to your children? You give them a gift and they say, I don't like that one, I like that one. How ungrateful are you? That makes sense, right? But when it comes to the Lord, it doesn't make sense because we are an entitled society and we're no longer a collective unit. We are independent people and we want things our way. We're like the spoiled little the spoiled child who has no brothers and sisters. Ask me how I know. Because I'm an only child. And my biggest challenge is sharing. My biggest challenge is thinking other than me because that's how I grew up. I mean, how can you blame me? That's all. The whole world was around me. So now I needed to learn to, it's a lonely world. So I need to learn to share. I need to learn to do everything that you learn with brothers and sisters. Okay? And it says, this is the law, and write it down in their sights so that they may observe and follow the entire plan and all its ordinances. Let's read verse 12. This is the law of the temple, the whole area surrounding the mountaintop. Newsflash, people, the city of David is not a mountaintop. All you need to do is study Charles Warren's topographical map from 1856, that to this day all the major archaeologists use his topographical map in order for them to do their digs because it's so precise. The Gihon Spring is 655 meters above sea level versus the Temple Mount is 755 meters above sea level. So it cannot be near the Gihon Springs as a source of water. While there are 37 cisterns, one of them is bigger than 3 Olympic-sized pools. I'm giving you some insight here and there. It takes a lot of work and effort to try to understand all this stuff. That's why I got myself a teacher. My teacher's been doing this for 40 years. And I still don't know. When I get around them, I'm going like, oh my God, why am I even teaching? It's really cool and humbling to know that I'm always learning. Never stop learning. Okay? Do me a favor, guys. When we talk to our children, stop answering them and their questions with a verse. Piece of advice. You know, sometimes our kids, they just want us to just be real with them. They don't need you to preach them all the time with a verse. If you're imperfect and you've done things in the past that is not right, let them know that you're also imperfect so they can see the change and they can admire the one you are now. Because sometimes the Lord talks to us in a manner that we can understand. His temple teaches us that. He uses in the Bible all the examples of our forefathers to let you know that, man, if David messed up, I have a chance. I just need to learn to repent. If David repented in such a way that the Lord forgave him, now he lived with chaos. He created his own chaos. He needed to manage it now because he created it, right? But the Lord forgave him. So we need to learn, like, not the mistake he made. We need to learn how he repented. Yeah? So therefore, the temple teaches you. You're a child. You have issues. Come to Papa. That's really what the feast is about. Oh, you got family issues? He don't care about your family issues during the feast. All the tribes need to show up, whether you like it or not. Hey, Simeon, I don't like Reuben. Okay, Reuben, you go all the way over there, and Simeon, you go all the way over there. Ephraim, stay away from everybody. Go to the north. Levi, you like to fight? You like to fight? Every time you have this bad temper. All right, I know what I'm going to do with you. Because of your temper and your loyalty, I'm going to put you to work on my temple. You like blood? I want you to, every time you do an offering and you offer, you think about what the Lord would have done to you if you don't have mercy on people. He uses your gift in order to, what is your gift? What do you bring to the table? What value do you bring to the kingdom? I've seen it already. I see people that they focus on certain areas to bring value to the conference. What is your 2 cents into the kingdom of Elohim? Someone plays the piano, but if they are not in sync, it's disorder and it's chaos. Just because they have a gift doesn't mean they have to stay within the time. They have to sing in harmony. Even though he's a really good musician and he's an outstanding musician and singer, they still have to put away their wills and complement one another and their gifts. Otherwise, you're not going to be ministered to, because then you're going to have a tug of war of egos over down here. That's the kingdom. So when you go to the temple, you put your ego aside. We put our needs aside, and we say, how can I praise you today, my King? How can I honor you today? How high do you want me to jump? Can I clean the floor for you, my King? Do you want me to bring water to those people who are hungry? Ever since I began to really focus on the temple, I notice everyone's gift everywhere I go. I make an effort to pay attention. Wow, this table, when I'm eating, I will not be able to eat here unless this person cleaned it. Thank you. Because I am a customer, but I still want to eat on a clean table. Before, I could care less. Just give me my food. I'm paying for it. Now I'm going like, wow, that cook may be having issues with family members. Maybe he cannot pay his bills. But still, he shows up, and he makes a nice meal so I could just eat. You get it? He didn't care about my issues. I didn't care about his. Well, I'm there because I'm hungry. Well, he's there because he needs a job. And he knows that if he doesn't treat me with dignity and honor, and he doesn't give me his best of his ability, I'm not going to come back. He's not going to have a job. Therefore, we need each other. Whether you like him or not, whether you have a different creed or not, you still need him, that cook, to do it the way you like to have your meal. how much more the house of my king? Is this making sense to you? All right, only two of you. Thank you. I'm going to move on. So I'm going to go through this really quickly, and then I'm going to focus on the temple administration and service. Okay, it's going to make sense in a minute. Now, in the book of Genesis, have you ever considered the book of Genesis chapters 1 through 3 as a temple text? I hope you do. Because chapters 1 and 2, if you would have given chapters 1 and 2 of the book of Bereshit to anyone in the ancient world, they would have said, oh, we know what that is. That's a temple text. God has been enthroned in his creation. So let me put it to you this way. You know when you light on the candles last night and you did the blessing and you separated the day? Did you realize that you were actually part of an enthronement ceremony last night? Because you read Genesis chapters 1. Let me read it to you. Genesis chapters 2. And every Orthodox person reads this. It's called the Kiddush, the sanctification of the day. And Sabbath is not really Sabbath until you actually read these verses. You can do the blessing of the wine on the bread, but that's just blessing the king for provision. But the day is not really an official Sabbath. Now, God knows this is enthronement day, but do the nations know it? No, they don't, until you tell them. So your function is to proclaim the holiness of who he is. So you say, thus the heavens and the earth, and all the host of them were finished. And on the seventh day, God ended his work, which he had done, and he rested. The word rest in the ancient world was an idiom for kingship, ruleship, authority, and ownership. Let me repeat that again. In the ancient world, the word rest was an idiom for a king when he establishes kingdom. He builds a temple. Now he is enthroned. Now he is resting. Now he is leading. Now he is the king. Now he has authority. Now he has ownership. Now he rules from his kingdom. And in this case, God's rules in the earth as his creation. You missed it. You should have said amen, hallelujah on that one. You know why you missed it? Because now the Lord says, I have created humanity for one purpose, that every week you be a partaker of the microcosm of the millennial reign by rehearsing the millennial reign and by letting everyone know that this day is like not any other day. It's from common going to holy, right? So we proclaim the holiness of the day, and we say, then God bless the seventh day. It's the only time that the word holy is found in the book of Genesis. In reference to anyone. It says, then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. He made it holy. Abraham was not called holy. Isaac was not called holy. Enoch was not called holy. Noah was not called holy. They were called righteous, never holy. The only time the word holy is found in the book of Genesis is in reference to Shabbat. And the Lord has invited you to a dinner party, to the weekly feast, and your only job is to say, I recognize God's authority, kingship, ownership, and provision on this day. So he set the table. And then you want to know what he tells you to do? Invite others to my table. Let them know who your king is. Let them know who provides. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam boreh pri agafen. Say, blessed are you, Lord, King of the universe. See? That's why you do the blessing after you do the Kiddush. You do the Kiddush, and then you give the blessing. Because you just recognize that the one who rests, your king, is the one who provides. He's a good provider. You see what I mean? Now, that's a different level of Shabbat. Now, when the children see you blessing your wife, and your wife blessing the husband, and you blessing the children, now it's all about a family. That will become imprinted in their lives forever. My son, my oldest, connects with Shabbat with the bread. Shabbat. My youngest connects with Shabbat with the wine. It is. Tito is the one who buys all the wine for Shabbat. and Rico cares about the bread. Now, for me, it's the day my wife makes me feel like a king in my house. Can't wait to be home for Shabbat. She bought me a special cup just for me. I have a chair just for me. I have a place on the table just for me. The siddur I use is just for me. And she even tells me, this is for you, my king. And I'm going like, oh my gosh, what do you want, sweetie? Have my kingdom? It's a microcosm of how we're supposed to make our king feel. If I feel that way and I'm a mere mortal, then I said, I want to make my king feel the same way. So my house becomes the dwelling place of his authority on Shabbat, and it becomes a what? A microcosm of the peace, the shalom of the kingdom, and it becomes an embassy for the Lord. Anyone who's hungry out there, I could invite them to my table to let them know who the God of Israel is. He is righteous, He's good, He's holy. Anybody explain Shabbat to you like that? Now, Exodus, you have 16 chapters dealing with the temple. What time am I supposed to be done? Okay. What time is it right now? Time flies. How come when you sit over there, it's like the longest time? And when you're here, it goes by so fast, right? Okay. Exodus, 16 chapters, talks about the tabernacle. Leviticus, the whole book. But how many of you, let's be honest, how many of you, during your time in the church system, you will read Leviticus, you jump from chapters 1 to chapters 8. You don't want anything in between those chapters. Okay? And then 1st and 2nd Chronicles, all these chapters deal with the temple. Ezra, 3 chapters deal with the temple. The whole book of Psalms, Ezekiel, Haggai, Malachi, Luke chapters 1 and 2, Acts, the whole chapter. Revelation is all about the temple. Hebrews, how about Hebrews? Have you ever read Hebrews in the context of the Day of Atonement in the year of Jubilee? I just threw a little wrinkle at you. Hebrews 9:22 talks about the year of Jubilee. Okay? All right. So let's talk about the temple administration and the service. Because once you understand who the king is, once you understand what the palace looked like, and by the way, can you go to Matthew 24, verse 1, please? Because this is the verse that always comes up to somebody in the audience. It's normal. I understand it. When you have it, please read it real loud. 1 and 2.
Jesus left the temple and was walking away when his disciples came up to him and called his attention to its buildings.
To its buildings. Keep going.
You see all these things, he asked?
But what things is he talking about there? Buildings.
I tell you the truth, not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down.
Okay, well, what is the context of the verse? The whole Temple Mount? I mean, the extension walls over here? So let me show you real quick. I got to talk about this. Okay, you see these walls here? These were expanded by Herod to the south, to the west, to the north, and half of the east right over here. 38 feet north of the modern-day Eastern Gate. 38 feet north of the modern-day Eastern Gate, Herod expanded to the north. But the text is talking about the temple buildings. These are retaining walls. They're not temple buildings. These are the temple buildings right over here. You have the ashes of the red heifer were kept here. The small Sanhedrin was kept here. The wood was put here in the northeast of the court of the women. The Nazirite vows were announced here in the southeastern corner. The oils in the southwest corner of the court of the women. The Nazirite, the lepers were announced here. Underneath this building was a mikveh. Remember, there were 10 lepers healed by Yeshua, right? That's a very important room that will have to take place in that story. Then you have the court of the women. Then you have the Nicanor gate. Then you have Beit Hanitzotz, Beit Hamoked, Beit Ozrot. You have Beit Aptines. And then you have the building. All these buildings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 buildings. Every single one of them were destroyed. Exactly what that verse says. But we never known that the walls that you see today are retaining walls constructed by Herod, because we don't read Josephus. We rather read books like Yasher and Enoch and books that are not in the Bible, right? And now we make them into biblical canons, but then you have to do the same thing with Josephus, because Josephus saw everything, right? Primary sources. So if he saw it, why not take that in consideration, right? So therefore now we have that problem. So there was an administration in the temple. How does that work? I'm going to focus now, as I give you the introduction that long, I want to give you now what I called how the body of Messiah is supposed to function based on how the temple worked and how the administration worked in the temple. Okay, you want to have a congregation? Follow the blueprint. Okay, watch this. There were 15 families. I'm not going to read it because transferring into the PowerPoint changed the font. But there were 15 families that were in charge of the temple. Okay? These are the name of the 15 families. Now, this is lining up with Ezra, with Nehemiah, with the Bible. Everyone had a goal, had a role. In other words, like here in this conference, you have the people who take care of the sound, the music, the teaching, the registration, the food, right? There are roles and there are gifts. My question to you is, what is your role and what is your gift? And have you prayed to God to reveal to you what is your role in His kingdom? Because see, my God was so good, He gave a job to everyone. As long as the temple stood, everyone had a job for life. But you see, you look at the temple and you don't realize the organizational skills they needed to have, because if you have oil in the temple, then you need to have olive oil farms. You got to have a lot of trees. Where do you find them? You understand? So let's go down the list so we understand how important the function was. Remember, the temple was the center of worship. The temple was the center of life, the center of identity. When a king wanted to shame a nation, he will kill the king, destroy the temple, rape the women, take them captive. Why would they do that? Kill the king? The king was the image of the God being worshipped in that temple. So this is why in the Bible, when Goliath lost to little David, you notice that the whole the army, Philistines, they ran away. Why did they run away? Only one guy died. Psychologically, think about it. They have their giant, great warrior, and the little bitty rejected little guy nobody wanted, defeated the biggest warrior in this army. So in their mind, they're saying like, wait a minute, if their little guy defeated because he came in the name, that's why it says, well, I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts. And when that little David beat Goliath, then the army says, wait a minute, that means that their God is greater than ours, so let's run, because if that little guy came in the name of that God no one sees and defeated our biggest warrior, we have no hope. Let's go. That's the way it worked. That's why the king war in the ancient world. Because the kings were the first ones to fight. If the king died at war, the army gave up, because he was the image of the God that they're representing. Yes? That's why the world, when Messiah comes and he defeats the enemy, the whole world will submit to Messiah. Quickly. First of all, well, we didn't think you existed. We didn't even know you by your real name. You are really a Messiah. And we're going to be saying, I told you. You know? Is that making sense? Okay, so let's talk about the organizational skills. Now, according to Jeremiah, which is a researcher, he estimated there were 18,000 priestly line. 18,000 priests in the temple. That's not including the Levites. The Levites are the overall tribe. It's like saying all of you are Levites, but my brother here is descendant of Aaron. And then there's another 18,000 descendants of Aaron. They are all Levites, but you are not all priests. You get that? Okay. So now you have Johanan ben Pinehas in charge of the seals given in exchange for money to purchase sacrifices. So you need a mechanism of money. Why? Because when you go to the temple, you couldn't bring money from Persia or from Rome or from Greece, Alexandria. Why? Because there are images of other gods, and you cannot do that in the temple. So you needed to have money changers. It was not a problem having money changers in the temple. It was the problem when the money changers were capitalizing and charging an extra tax to the people. It's called the kalvon in the Mishnah. That was the problem why Yeshua turned over the tables. They were oppressing the people because the feasts are coming. Ananias owned all the shops. He will raise the prices to all the shopkeepers, so thus they have to raise the prices of all the goods. And now you cannot even buy what you wanted to because now they capitalize on the feast days. It's like going to the Olympics. Imagine the Olympics come to this town. If you own a home in this town, you're going to make a killing. For those 2 weeks, you're going to charge 3 times the amount of the rent. Are you guys with me? All right, you're not bored, are you? Okay, so now we have the seals. So you will go and buy an offering. You can just go in and say, hey, I want an offering, and that's it. No, you have to go to a prescribed place. You got to get the animal. Then you give them the money, and the people would exchange a seal. Then you take that seal to the proper place, and they'll give you the animal that you purchased. Perfect order, right? So you need to know who they did it. So that means that this family, who are the people, his family had a job for life. Every single one of those 15 families had a job for life in the temple. They were born with purpose. They were born with a role. Okay. Now, Ahiah, he was in charge of libations. Whoa. Have you read the book of Leviticus? How much wine they needed for the libation offerings? That means that you need vineyards. But wait a minute, not just any vineyard. Your vineyard now is dedicated to the Lord. So imagine if you own the biggest vineyard in town. And I tell you guys, hey, by the way, Bill, I want your vineyard to become a king's vineyard. Every wine, everything that comes out of here is going to be offered in the temple. How hard would you work in your vineyard to provide the best wine so the king will be pleased in the temple? And as long as that temple is still standing, you're going to have a job for life, and your children is going to have an inheritance. Oh, but wait a minute. You need also how to transport them. You need someone who can prune them. You need someone who can pick them. So now you're going to create a job environment for everybody. But everyone is going to be excited. Why? Because you are doing the grapes. You are picking the grapes. You are pruning the vines, not for just anybody, but for the King of the universe. Then you need transport. You see how it expands? Now imagine if you own a transport company, my brother, and then Bill says, brother, I got a problem. What's your name? Wayne. Wayne, I got a problem. The priest came over and told me that my vineyard is going to be the vineyard chosen by the king for the wine, but I don't have a way to transport them. Would you get the contract? And you're going like, yeah, I have a contract for life. Because as long as the temple's standing, they always do libations. He's going to have a job. I'm going to have a job. My kids are going to have a job. But then you need to have transportation. You got the trucks, but you need more. He owns them. So what is your name, brother? Miles. So Wayne comes to you. Hey, Miles, I got a problem. I only have 2 trucks. I need 20 more. You see how it trickles down? All because the Lord chose one family that needs help from another family. So if you don't have the transport and you don't have the vehicles, can he do his job? So everyone now has the gifts to make everything work so that the Lord, all you see is you go to the temple and you see the most desired wine in all of Israel has been offered, put on the altar, and you go, if I could only taste it. Nope. It's for the king. Knowing that your vineyard is the one chosen by the King of the universe, knowing that your trucks are going to be carrying the wine that is going to be presented on the altar, and knowing that you provided the vehicles that the trucks are taking over the wine to be dedicated. Hello? That's only just one thing. Then you have the other family who are in charge of the allotment, selections of the priest for the day. You need to learn who these guys are because it was a descendant of Mattathias, Samuel, who selected Zechariah for his service the morning that he went into the incense service that the angel appeared to him. So in the kingdom, you're going to see this guy walking around. You want to validate whether or not Zechariah was chosen for that role? Hey, is there anybody here? Mattathias Shmuel. He goes, yeah, Nipo. Hey, I got a question for you. Do you remember one time in the first century you chose Zechariah to do the incense service? Oh, I remember. Isn't that the guy who was muted for a while? He went mute after he did the service. He got so excited he never got chosen for that before, and never after that. So he could even talk into some guy named his son. What was the name of his son? And John the Baptist says, that was me. You get the picture? So you're going to actually be interviewing the people that you read in the Bible that no one knows about. In other words, oh, he was selected for the incense service. Now we know which family he was. You actually be able to go in the kingdom and look for these people, and they will be able to validate the events because that was their job and their children. And then you have Petahiah, the nest of fowls for sacrifices. Wait a minute. This is a specific job because if you have chickens, right, or if you have doves, you got to be careful because the excrement of those things can be harmful for your health. That's why there were no chickens in Jerusalem. Chickens were not allowed inside the city of Jerusalem. Did you know that? So wait a minute. So where's the cock crow? What is that all about? Didn't Peter talk about the cock crow? But there were no chickens in Jerusalem. Because the cock crow is the name for the temple crier who will wake everybody up in the morning, just like the cock crow is when I live in Puerto Rico and around 4 in the morning they go cuckoo. Its function. They look at the cock crows and they go like, man, about 4:30, 4 o'clock, cuckoo. Okay, so who's the family line in the temple who's going to wake people up? Oh, I am, cock crow, Hagevel. That's your function. Just like that function of a cock crow in the morning, the chicken in the morning, waking everybody up. That's your job. That means that around 4:30, 5 o'clock, you wake people up to get ready for the service in the morning. That's exactly what it means. So now you watch a Christian movie and the Passion of Christ, and you're waiting for the highest point, the cock crow. And Jewish guy is kind of curious to start watching. The Jewish guy sits down. Well, let me see this Christian movie, what it's all about, and he understands the temple. And then the Jewish guy's watching, and then the whole episode of Peter, rejecting Yeshua, everything lines up pretty good until the Jewish guy who knows the temple hears a literal cock crow. He's going to go like, they missed it. That little piece of information can turn the whole Jewish guys to understand things differently. Because it was not an animal, it was actually a human being calling out the worship. Man, is this okay? You look at me like I'm nuts. You didn't think there was so much in the temple that would be interesting, right? But you need to know this because the Bible talks about it. The New Testament talks about the cock crow. How many of you did not know that the cock crow was actually a real human being? You learned something new today. Now go to your Christian friends and share that with them. The Hebrew word is hagevel. And the reason why there were no chickens in Jerusalem, they were afraid that the excrement would defile the animals. And it's true. Because what happened to bird flu and all that stuff, remember? Imagine a cattle or sheep, they have a cut in the bottom of their toes or whatever, their feet, or the paw, whatever you want to call it. I forgot now, I went blank. And the hooves, thank you. And then now it gets bacteria and they died. That could create a problem. So they said, no, they're not allowed inside the city walls. Okay? All right. Then where are we? 5. Benahia, the health department. Did you know they have doctors in the temple? They had to. Because they can never wear shoes. And there was an amazing floor that they used. Now, some people believe that they had in Herod's palaces, they had like a mechanism to heat up the floors. They believe the temple was designed that way, but we're not quite sure yet. Okay? But imagine if you're a priest, you eat more meat in 1 week than you do your whole week, your whole year. Because the priests, they were more like agricultural type. They wouldn't eat meat every day like we do today. They couldn't. Imagine if you have 10 sheep by the end of the year, you're not going to have a flock. Okay? So they eat more grains and stuff. But in the temple, the priests, they have to eat some of the sacrifices. They cannot eat it in the temple area. They have to go to the adjacent buildings, to some of the side buildings right over here. They can never eat it in here. Where is it? Right in here. They have to eat it here, 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 here. Okay? So the doctor, he needed to be there. For what reason? First of all, they cannot wear shoes. Ever wear shoes. Why? Because wearing shoes in the ancient world in a sacred space represented challenging the authority of the one who owned the space.
Like Moses?
Exactly. That's why when Moses went to the area, it says, remove your sandals, for where you're standing is holy ground, sacred space. Therefore, you have no authority over this sacred space. That's why the Muslims, if they see a Jewish guy removing their shoes and walking barefooted on the Temple Mount, they go bunkers. Because they know what that means. Oh, you mean to tell me that this area does not belong to the God of the Muslim, it belongs to the God of Israel? And the Jewish guy is not saying anything. He's just walking barefooted. And the Muslims are going like, because they know what that means. You see what I mean? That's why the Lord told Israel, anywhere you have the soles of your feet is your area. Did you know the way they used to declare real estate property in the ancient world? They used to measure the area and they used to walk it. You put a fence today. They used to walk it. Now you know why the Lord tell Abraham, walk to and fro, to the north, to the east, to the south, and the west. Anywhere you stand, it'll be your ground. Real estate laws. Have you studied real estate laws of the ancient world? Have you? Well, you should, because then the Bible will make sense. The Bible was not written for the 21st century audience, guys. The scriptures was written for an audience who understood these things. Now, these principles still prevail today. How? Through a fence. But how many of you buy a property and you walk your property? I did. And then everybody asks, hey, are you the owner? Yes, I'm walking it. Don't you see it? If not, it'll be trespassing. There are rules. In my house, if you trespass at 3 in the morning, 2 things will happen. One of them is not going to be good. Right? Now imagine if somebody tries to go through your window at 3 in the morning unannounced. Are you going to say, I'll pray for you, I love you? That's not the assumption. The assumption is somebody's trying to harm you. Right? Imagine the house of the Lord. What is the protocol of how to enter the house of God? What is the protocol of how to walk in the property of the great King of the universe? Do you go right or did you go left when you enter the court of the temple? You always went right. Only one person can go left. Only people can go left if they were in mourning. If you were in mourning, they knew you lost someone, so they comfort you. But you always enter one way, and you never came out the same way. If you entered in this door right here, you went to the right. No, not this one. If you enter through these doors here, you went to the right. Here, you came out through this way. If you entered through here, you went out this way. If you entered through here, you came out to this way. You did not do whatever you wanted to do in the temple of God. You follow the protocol of his instructions. So now he says, okay, my priests are going to work in the temple. They have no shoes, and it gets really hot, and it gets really cold. And they cannot wear any jackets like we have today. They have to wear the garments of linen garments, right? That's it when you do the service. Can you imagine a priest doing the service in the middle of winter in Israel with snowing? So you need a doctor to make sure he doesn't have problems with the stomach and also frostbite. Or it gets really hot in limestone, it's going to get really hot in your feet. You don't think about that, do you? Because we don't study these things. So they have to have someone in charge of them. No wonder the doctors, the best doctors in the world, are normally Jewish guys. Because they already had a mandate. God already chose them to do that in the temple. So it still prevails even in Israel. That's why they have great lawyers. Because the Torah, they're taught from the get-go, the kids like that, their first book they're taught is Leviticus. And then in all the schools, they are taught to challenge and debate ideas, and they challenge and they argue about law, and they're trying to understand. So now they become lawyers because that's what they learned their whole life. God has been training Israel to function. Who are the biggest innovators in the world today in technology? The Jewish people. Who were the most innovators back then? The Jewish people. Nothing new, because God gave them the gift. All they need to do is work it together to build up Israel and to build the kingdom, so the nations will know that the God of Israel is wise and gives wisdom to his people. We now need to use our gifts in order to raise the name of God to greatness, through righteousness. Is this making sense? Okay? All right, so next. You're not bored, are you? Okay. So it says, Nahunya of the digging wells, the pilgrims on the highways leading to Jerusalem. Now, check this out. This building here is a really nice building. So let's pretend for 1 second it had no heating, no electricity, no water, no bathrooms. Can we do this here? Can we do this? Can we do the conference in this place? This will be just walls without function. It cannot work, right? So without the electricity, then I have to scream all the time, more than I am now. I just talk loud, okay? Without electricity, you cannot eat a warm meal in a cold day. You go home. I don't want to be here. Yes? So what makes this really function is the tools and the electricity and you. If you never come to this place, then it's a dead building. The water in the temple. People forget that you need oil for electricity, for light. Now remember the olives? I already talked about the vineyards and the wine. Now imagine you have to have the mechanism to deal with all the garments of the priest, linen, wool. So that means that all the sheep and all the rams and all the stuff, you need the wool to make certain garments. You need the linen to make certain garments. But wait a minute, now you need people who's going to put it together. You got to have a whole army of women. Back then, that's who they did it, who took care of all this needs and all that stuff. You see, it's not just the garments. Oh, wait a minute, the garments are holy, so you cannot throw them out. You cannot touch it once it's gone to the level of holiness. So now you take the garments and you make wicks out of it. Because all those buildings, they needed electricity everywhere. They didn't have what we have today. They have the oil. If you need the oil, that means that you need olive trees. If you need the olive trees, you need people who can transport them. And the mechanism to make it work. You need the people to prepare the olive, but not just for just anybody. This time it's got to have the seal of the king. That means that you cannot use the oil that has been set aside for the temple. If you open that seal, it's called encroachment, and you die. Because that's for the king. So if you have an olive press and you're making the oil, you're going to make sure that no one touches it. Because it has the shield of the king, the seal of the king on it. That's preserved for the king. Now imagine if you're carrying a bottle of the best olive oil in Israel, not to put it in your food, but to give it in the temple so the service will take place. And it has the seal of the... Imagine you're walking by the way and you recognize the seal. And you go, oh, wow, Rico's olive oil is actually used in the temple. The honor that the Lord gives me by being a one person with a function in his temple. My job is to tell you, by the way, I need help. Can you help me? Yes, I want to work for the king. And he is so good that he's not going to leave you hanging. He pays on time. He doesn't oppress his people. You know? Listen, when I did this study, my whole ministry changed. Because now what happened was, sometimes when we started ministry, especially us, in this particular understanding, the amount of information that comes in is so fast, so rapid, and so much, in such a short time, that sometimes we feel self-righteous and empowered, and instead of becoming edifying to somebody else and empowering other people, we try to do everything on ourselves. You know, we complain about the system of religion that the pastor was a fivefold ministries, and we come to the Hebrew roots. We want to teach Hebrew. We want to do temple. We want to tell people about conspiracies. We want to tell people about everything. We want to do it all, right? But when I did the teaching, I realized that I cannot do my work unless I value yours. You see what I mean? So I need to learn your talent. I was a baseball scout for 10 years. The Lord chose, I'm telling you, the Lord set me up for my job today. Because I used to drive for hours just to watch a baseball game. It's not a bad gig. Okay? I wish it paid better. But there were times when I would drive. The drive over to the field was longer than the time it took me to evaluate the player. That's a bummer. You get there and you go, man, you're all excited. You're looking for the best player. You want to sign him. And you get there and the guy's terrible. And you go, but something that I learned in the Torah that allowed to change my whole approach in scouting was that in the Torah, you're not supposed to count people. In baseball, that was a big problem. Because the baseball players have a jersey with a number. Hey, 17, come here, man. When I started studying Torah, I had to change that whole mechanism. And I said, excuse me, what is your name? Hey, excuse me, you have number 17, but what is your name? And you don't know what it does to a 14, 15-year-old when a guy who holds their dream in their hands is actually calling by their name. I go to a 15-year-old kid who wants to play professional baseball, and he doesn't feel he's good enough. He doesn't think he has the tools. He doesn't feel he's any of it. And then I am the one who's a professional baseball scout, and I call you by your name. What's your name again? John? So I see you playing a game. I say, hey, John, how are you? How's it going? How old are you? Oh, I'm 17. And by the way, you interested in professional baseball? The face they put together, it's like, whoa, I got a professional baseball scout talking to me. Immediately in your mind, you're going like, I could be good enough to be a professional. And then I'm trying to encourage him. But if I say, yo, 17, come here, man. Are we cattle? So I was treating the baseball players and the prospects as animals without even knowing. So when I began to learn Torah, I'm going like, wait a minute. Let me get to know them. Let me get to get their name. Let me know you by name. And they make them feel so special. The same way a baseball scout made me feel when I was 15 years old and I was a sophomore, and this guy came to me and called me by my name, which is hard to pronounce. Not Rico, that's not my real name, that's my nickname. He goes, hey, Hernan. In California, and I turn around, and it's a baseball scout. I'm a scout for St. Louis Cardinals. My name is such and such. Hey, man, you're a really good player. I really enjoy watching you play. Would you be interested in playing on my scout team? That was the day that I said I could play professionally. That was the day my whole paradigm changed. That was the day I said, what do I need to do to be better? Because someone actually noticed my talent. So now I'm taking that into this realm. I want to recognize each and every one of your talent. You need to believe in that talent and put it to work for the Lord. What is your talent for the Lord? What is your gift? The Lord gave talents and gifts to Israel, and he established the mechanism and the organization for them to work within it. What is your talent? What do you bring to the table? What do you bring to your congregation? Every single problem in every congregation always comes when now this is the thing. We submitted to bad leadership in the system of religion. We are submitting ourselves to terrible leadership in the Congress and the Senate today. We don't get up and say anything bad. Oh, we need the Constitution. We need our leaders. Pray for them. But no one wants leadership in your local congregations when it comes to Torah. We don't want the Lord telling us which days he wants you to meet on his feast. We don't want to listen when he says, listen to this and listen to that. We create our own. We don't want any leaders because, oh, no, we have elders. Where in the world does it say that in the Torah only? Anywhere Israel was without leadership, they went into chaos. Didn't we learn the lesson? When they actually rejected Moses when he went to the mountain, they went into idolatry and they died. In the time of the judges, they did according to the imagination of their hearts and they died. In the northern kingdom, they went after the bad leader Jeroboam, changed the priesthood, changed the feast, and changed all the temple, and they went into the dispersion to this day. Haven't we learned our lesson? Can your children function without the parents? Can they? Can they feed themselves? Can they go to work? Can they do that? No. So what makes you think that we cannot have any leadership now that we come into the Torah? I mean, there has to be a leader to set up this conference. Someone has to delegate what to do, what not to do. So let's just make it democratic. You show up whenever you want. You put up whatever speakers you want. You can do whatever you want. We're going to have chaos. Welcome to America in the 21st century. We have a homosexual president. Running for president. Homosexual guy, openly homosexual guy, running for president. No one's saying anything about it. How come we don't say anything? Oh, because it's not politically correct? We're not supposed to be. We're representing the God of creation. We have to stand for his righteousness. We could care less what the world says. But no, we don't want any leadership. So because we don't have any leadership, because now we're self-sufficient, no wonder we're thinking in so many crazy things, taking our attention away from feeding the homeless, the widows, and the strangers. Where are the soup kitchens in the Hebrew Roots movement? Nowhere to be found. Where are they? We did it in the church. We send money abroad all over the place to get wells and feed people that we don't even know. But then, God forbid, somebody asks for an offering because we don't know our function. We lost our way in knowledge. We fell in love with the tree of knowledge instead of with the tree of life. The Lord gave us to choose, and we taken the bait. We went after the tree of knowledge. The longest distance from here to here, reconciling both. When I started in this, it was all here. Until the day the Lord says, come here, son, sit down. When my son was a kid, my oldest, every time he misbehaved, I just grabbed him by these over here. That hurts. And I said, come here. Sit. To the point that every time I say, Rico, he goes. I remember the time he started talking back to me. He was like 7, 8 years old. I will say something. There's nothing that drives me crazy. Kids hitting me. I don't allow any kid to hit me. A kid hitting my father? I don't think so, dude. And talking back to me. So I told my son, I said, dude, you're 7 years old. I don't have to put up with that. You don't talk back to me. Okay, 3 times. On the 3rd time, I don't care where we're at, open backhand slap in your mouth. Well, you're not going to do that. Okay, sure. Time goes by, I say something. 1. 2 or 3 days go by. By the 3rd time, we're in 7-Eleven. Never forget it. 7-Eleven, I say, everybody, you get pop. I did it. Oh, you can't hear your kid? Really? Are you going to take care of my kids when he's 18 years old? He does whatever he wants to do? Because if you don't want me to discipline my own son, then when he misbehaves and he does something stupid, I'm going to send him to your house. Because that's my responsibility, not yours. To this day, he's 28 years old, and when we're talking and gets a little heated about something, I respect that he's a grown man and he's very good. But there are times we're talking and he wants to say something. He goes, it's the funniest thing. So there are times we're talking. I remember when he was like 21, right? And we're having this exchange, and I'm telling him, he's going. And I couldn't be mad anymore. It was so funny. I said, okay, just stop. Talk to me. I forget that you're 21 now. You're not 7. He starts cracking up, and he goes, man, I just remembered. I didn't want to say anything. He was 21. It works. Discipline works. Not abusing people. Discipline works. The Lord does the same thing to us. But you know how he handles everything? He wants you to feel special. He wants you to feel special. He wants you and you to feel special. He wants you to feel special. So what does he do? He establishes a mechanism that he can give people roles, and he gives you gifts. Your job is to be the best person at the gift and the role God gave you. Look, right now, we're getting hungry, aren't we? You're enjoying the teaching, but you're going like, man, please, hurry up, I'm hungry. Everyone has a role. It's like if you really need to go to the bathroom, you're hoping and praying that the person who cleaned the bathroom just put toilet paper. Let me bring it home for you. Seriously. The most important person in your world is the janitor. Am I right or wrong? When you're hungry, the most important person in your world is the cook. When you're thirsty, the one who has water. Yes? That's how awesome God is. That he makes it in such a way that everyone has their time to shine. This morning, I had the amazing opportunity to compliment the people who work in the hotel. Those who are staying right over here in the Holiday Inn Suites. Man, I travel everywhere around the world. That's a clean hotel. And the rooms are like, wow. So I had a chance to tell the lady. I mean, the lady even made an extra omelet there, prepared so I could eat because everything was so. She actually went out of her way to make something. And I told her, wow, thank you so much for making that. And then I went up to my room, and there was the lady who cleans the rooms. And, you know, I don't let them work on my room on Shabbat. I put the thing, do not disturb. But I let her know. I said, listen, I stay in hotels all over the world. Man, this is really clean. Thank you. You should see her smile. Because normally when they're walking, they always have a long face. Make up a bed here. Go to this one. Do the same thing here. Go to that one. Go the same thing here. And we go by them like if they don't matter. But if it's not for them, we don't have a clean sheet in that bed. But you see, the sad thing and the shameful thing is, that 10 years ago, I wouldn't have cared. That's their job. They're supposed to do a good job for me. I'm paying money for that. Instead of saying, yes, I'm paying for the service, but if she's not giving me her best, and maybe doing something she's not passionate of doing, but still giving me her best, I'm not going to have a good night's sleep. Thank you. And the fact that someone acknowledged their being, or their existence, or their value, just because they're janitors or they clean rooms doesn't mean they don't have value in this world. They have more value than we think because they're working within their function. My uncle, he told me he retired as a janitor. He didn't want to do anything else but a janitor. And he worked at a school. I said, why do you like your job so much? Could you get something else? He goes, no, you don't understand. I got a chance to really make some meaningful relationship with kids. He loved the job because he will clean the school for kids, and the kids will see him later on walking around and remember the janitor. What is your role in my King's kingdom? Do you need to be recognized in order for you to be happy? Or you just need to recognize that God has given you a gift so you can function within that gift? You don't need anybody to acknowledge how good you are if you're doing it with your whole heart. I'm no longer looking for acceptance for people anymore. At one point I did. I don't need that. My only desire is to know if my King is pleased with me. Every time I go to bed, I say, Lord, are you pleased with my service today? Because I'm doing it for him. I'm not really doing it for anybody. I just want him to be pleased that when I put my head on that pillow, that I can say, Lord, have I found favor in your eyes today? Have I done what you required of me today? Have I been good in your eyes? Am I worthy to be even in your kingdom? Thank you, Lord, for the gift. Thank you for the gift that you've given me to teach your Torah to the nations, to take me on eagle's wings around the nations. Am I doing it good? Lord, I want to praise you. Lord, I want to thank you. Lord, I want to exalt you. Lord, I want to honor you. Please teach me. Please lead me. Because all I want to do is when I go to sleep, I want him to just hopefully even know me by name. But you know, I want everybody to know about the house. I want everyone to know about each building, the size, the beauty, even the floor. I remember when I saw the floor in the city of David, I said, oh, I got to take a picture. Archaeologists said that's the way it looked like, more or less. So I took a picture and I called the guys and I said, Lord, guys, you need to put this in the temple of my king because it's got to look that nice. They put it in there. And I look at that floor and I go, to behold, to walk in the courts of Israel. And I have an idea now what it looked like. If you could only behold the beauty of the house that I study. If you could only behold it. It's not about the size of the buildings and how beautiful would it look like. Is because the king that I serve, the king that I follow, the king that I worship, the king that I'm committed to the rest of my life, he actually has given me access to teach about his holiness, his kingship, his authority, and his provision. And you are the blessing of that. You are the audience. So instead of complaining sometimes, we complain about stuff. Oh, I'm not being used. Well, stop encroaching on somebody else's role. 90% of all the issues in every congregation is when someone wants to do somebody else's job. I have people coming to me and say, well, how come you're the only one who gets to teach? Because I'm called to teach. You want to do my job? Go ahead. You better make sure you're called to do that. Because you're not going to hear me say, hey, can I cook for everybody? You're not going to eat. That's not my calling. I'm a terrible cook. I know my weeks. And I know my strength. The Lord knows my strength. I love to talk. So the Lord looked at me, he goes like, okay, we got a job for this guy. But we cannot give him just any job because he talks too much. He want to talk whatever, some stupid stuff. He goes, no, 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 I have temple. Focus on the temple. So I know my role and everything that stems from it. That's my role. You don't have to like it. You don't even have to agree with it. That's the job the Lord gave me. I'm trying to work with the responsibility he gave me. What is yours? What is your job in God's kingdom? What is your role in God's kingdom? Look, the time will come, and I'll finish with this, Mark. The time will come that preachers are no longer going to be needed. Because everyone will know about the Torah. Isn't that what it says? Everyone will know the Lord. So what am I going to do in the kingdom? Nothing? No, that's why I'm preparing myself in other areas. I'm preparing myself in what I love, self-defense. Who knows? I might be a police officer in the kingdom. I don't know. You know? But who can dig a well? Who can cook? Who can clean? Who can be an electrician? Who can be this? Guess what? You're still going to have houses. You're still going to have a life. You're still going to do things in the kingdom where the Lord's going to use it for his purpose. Guys, listen. How many times did I tell you how awesome your bread was? It really was good. You definitely have a gift. And I value your gift because I tasted bread all over the world, New Zealand, Australia, Israel, everywhere. Yours is really, really good. Not better than my wife's, for the record. I have to say that. But, you know, it's really good. But seriously, when somebody recognizes something that you spend time doing out of love, it's not like you didn't do it for the pedestal. You didn't do it because you want to be recognized. You did it for the Lord, right? But it always feels nice to know, especially women who go out of the way to make the food and do all that stuff. Sometimes all you want the husband to acknowledge that you did something decent. Imagine if you come home and he takes the food and throws it against the wall and says, "You're a terrible cook." He doesn't appreciate anything you do. My king appreciates every gift you have to give him. You just need to find out what is your role in his kingdom and stay in your lane. If you stay in your lane, he will bless you. In the interstate, come on up. In the interstate, everything works perfectly if you go the right direction and if you stay in your lane. And in the interstate, they have a speed limit for a reason. Now, if you go above the speed limit, then you run the risk of creating chaos. If you want to go from lane to lane, you ask permission. Because if not, it causes road rage, which leads to chaos. You want to learn about the Torah and your role? Drive in the highway and say, okay, Lord, my role today is to get to work. So how do I get there? What plan do I have? But now we don't even think anymore because we have GPS. We just put it in and it takes us. It tells us. I even have a voice of a woman telling me what to do, even on the GPS. I can't get away from my wife. So you put it in the GPS, turn right. I want to go left, turn right. And then if you miss the exit, turn around, go back right. The Torah is the instructions to bring order to your life. But you need to have a purpose. You need to have a role. What is your role and what is your purpose? Are you willing to live by the purpose and the gift God gives you? And if you haven't, and if you don't, then you're going to completely live your life doing something you're not passionate about and doing something you're not really called to do. And then you're going to get tired, you're going to get frustrated, and then you're going to get chaotic. And then you become destructive because you're unhappy. There are times when I just want to run. You know why I don't? Because I'm fully committed to the calling God's given me, and I'm working for him, not for the people. Thus, I just take a deep breath, go to jiu-jitsu class, try to choke people out, and then come back and be happy. Shabbat shalom.